We have 7 things that we prioritize when we play cello, and I always ask them, this is a little thought exercise. In my scale book I have this. 7 things that we think about when we play cello. And then we go through the thought exercise, and by the end, intonation doesn't rank anywhere near the top 3. I have been doing this for such a long time. I have a library of all this stuff. My students and my subscribers are like, well, I want the fingerings and I want the colors. I want your system.
Welcome to another episode here, whether you're watching this on Cello Online or watching it on the Clay McKinney Musical Listening channel. We're here with Jonathan Humphries talking about listening and talking about cello stuff. So make sure we'll link everything up so you can catch all the parts of the interview here. But Jonathan, welcome. It's so wonderful to have you here. We just so appreciate you taking the time out to share your expertise and your years of experience here with us.
Well, expertise, I will have to say that I'm an expert at one thing. I'm a pretty good expert at one thing. I'm pretty good at them. I will tap myself on the back. But thank you for inviting me, Clay. I appreciate it.
Our instruments, with the F holes being down below and the sound is going away from us, how do we listen to ourselves better? I mean, what do you say to students? What do you say to them? Like, how to help them, make them more aware? How do we become more aware, do you think, of listening to ourselves while we are performing? Because that the first few times, because we, of course, you and I, we record ourselves all the time now, and so we hear it. But there was a time when we would record ourselves and hear it and go, oh. We'd be like shocked. I'm of the age, I tell my students all the time, I had a mini disc recorder. I was in college in 1996. That was my second year when I started actually cello studies. And I tell them, you guys have these phones in your pockets. You can record yourself all the time. Why are you not recording yourself? But there's always that shock of, oh, that's what it sounds like. And we didn't know. We didn't know before. I don't know what the explanation for that phenomenon is. How do you help them get over the listening gap there?
Okay, I ask my students, what do you hear? Do you hear yourself near your F holes? Are you hearing yourself near your fingerboard? Or are you hearing yourself in the back of the room? Are you playing for that person back there? Or not just the front row people. Play for the people in the back. Play for them, and let that music call to them. And if you hit a wrong note, but play, get it out there to them. And then when you stop thinking about the score, stop thinking about everything, and then you give it back to your audience, you break down that fourth wall. That's what I think when it comes to, we don't necessarily listen to ourselves as much as we are, because we are the music. And at that one point when you decide to play something, we all go in our performance mode. Like, I want to play this, I want to play this, right? Oh, that note was wrong. I just played a wrong note right now. Huh, that happens. I played the swan 1,000 times. Probably you have too. But, there's a possibility you might hit a right note right or wrong. But how is your performance going? And I always relate it to a meal. If you're enjoying a meal, maybe sometimes you'll get a little chicken bone in your mouth, and sometimes something will taste a little off. But then overall, how does it taste? How is the experience? How is the ambiance? Are you creating ambiance? This is why when I tell my students is, what is the most important thing? We have 7 things that we prioritize when we play cello, and I always ask them, this is a little thought exercise. In my scale book I have this. 7 things that we think about when we play cello. And so I have them list their 7 most important things you prioritize. A lot of them say intonation. A lot of them say, a lot of them say intonation is number 1. And then we go through the thought exercise, and by the end, intonation doesn't rank anywhere near the top 3. But universally, there are 3 things all cello players all the time will always prioritize, no matter what. And I go through the thought exercise with them, and when they realize, oh, that is, that's important. And you talked about, again, listening. Today I was talking to a student, and the student says to me, I did it so well in practice before I was in front of you. And I said, okay, hold. Just like you said, there are plenty of recording devices out there. Record yourself. I throw down the gauntlet. Record yourself and give me the recording. And then when we meet for next lesson, we'll listen to it together, but after you play it for me. And in the 25 plus years I've been teaching this instrument, I have yet to have a single person. I remember when they had little mini like cassette recorder things. And I would have my middle schoolers like recording. Jonathan did so well. Really? I always said, you really did, but better record yourself. I even gave a kid one, record with this Walkman thing. Record yourself. Comes back to me. I did better and so he played it. His name was Jeremy. And then we listened to ourselves and like, oh my God, that didn't sound good. I was like, there's a reason, because when you are playing, practicing, you are in the moment. You are by definition subjective. You're not, because you're part of the subject. When you are objective, you record yourself and then you listen to it, you cease to become the subject, you become the object. And when you're the object, you're the third person, you're able to see all the frailties of the good and the bad. So your microphone isn't as nice as a beautiful microphone on my stand. Okay, but you can still have good tone, you can hear, always you can hear through bad recording, bad mics, you can still hear the quality of the musician. But again, all those little things like stridents and artifacts, those things will really come out on this player that's learning, especially when they cease to become subjective and start to be objective and realize, if you can sound good on an iPhone microphone, you're going to sound great on these large diaphragm microphones.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I always tell them, a couple of things. I always say to them, when you get in front of your teacher, you get in this live situation where you have to play it, adrenaline is the wonder drug. I always think there's a little bit of biology and chemistry involved where the adrenaline, you hear differently. You're going to hear differently in a live situation where you're hyped up. Because that's what we're designed to do. When all that stuff starts happening, and it's like, and once you get in that high pressure situation, you just become more critical. And I always try to encourage them. It's like, if you can find a way to be that critical, like you said, and be objective, be the third party when you're on your own, then you'll start to hear yourself differently when you're all by your lonesome. You mentioned something a couple of times, which is a cornerstone of what the conversation, which is that this listening, this kind of functional part of what we do, is simply too interconnected with the musical part, or what we sometimes refer to. We've had a tendency over the decades, the centuries, to separate technique from music, and I think, yes, there are always fundamental things that you need to learn and you need to focus on. But when I hear you talk, I so agree with the fact that music is a fundamental. Like, in the end, you can't really separate it out. Like, it has to be a part of what we are doing. Like, it's not a separate thing. They're too interweaved together to make them separate. Do you ever have this conversation with students, or like, how does it go? What when you're trying to like really convince them that they're interlocked, right? Well, I guess you kind of already said it. Like, when you're in your performance mode, you're playing for other people, right? Yeah. That it's for someone else. Yeah, I so very much agree with that.
One thing I do with my students is I tell them that music is for reference, not for reading. And then sometimes I'm like, all right, it's enough. Close your music, play it by memory. Or sometimes I'll start the lesson. I'm like, you should always pick up your cello and play by memory. Now here in France, we don't say par mémoire. We don't say par mémoire. On dit par cœur, which means by the heart. And if you think something that's by the heart is not by memory, memory is very analytical. I'm thinking, reactions, techniques. But when we think by the heart, par cœur, means not only do you know it, you feel it. You experience it emotionally in addition to physically as well. We're doing a physical action that requires an emotional component. That's what music is. We're just specialized athletes being all catching feelings about it at the same time. That's what we basically are. We're not the NFL player or the basketball player. We're them. But even in the context of watching teen sports or the Olympics or things, sometimes they see that and say, well, that's art, because it's free flow and it flows so well. And it's just like, it looks like art because it's so flowing. And in that moment, it is art. And we are doing the same thing, but at a very minute level. These are our players, this is our pitch, and we're running around, but we're injecting a presence into every single motion. So the whole creation and the physical interaction of us in this box creates this thing where we sit down and we love and listen to, called music, that we can't touch, that we can't feel physically, that we can't smell, that we can't taste, but we experience. And this experience as music makers, and that's what I always say to my students is, we go through 4 levels. As a student, the student discovers. And then when you are finished with your discovery, you become the technician. And what does the technician do? The technician executes. And after you're done executing the technical stuff, you move on to the 3rd level. And what is this? This is the player. And what does the player do? The player performs. And so you're in level 3, and so you get to the point where you're playing through the song, you're performing it, but you're not level 4. You haven't fully realized the what it is. And the 4th level is a musician. And what does a musician do? A musician makes. It makes in the moment. You sit there, you pay that money to see this artist, to see something created in front of you. I want to be entertained. Entertain me. That's when I sit down. People you want to entertain me? Pick up something, bang on a pan. You're creating for me. Create for me. I'm all about that. I'm just like, I love when people when you don't realize something's going to happen, the street buskers, and they create something, and you're like, I always give money to street buskers.
You have a scale book that you published recently. You have actually many scores for sale on your website. But first, tell us about the scale book, and then maybe tell us some about the scores.
Yeah. I guess I'll pull that up real quick. My scale book. Why make a scale book? Why should anyone make a scale book? There are already scale books out there. Why should you make a scale book? Like it exists already. It exists there. There's plenty. You can get it for free. Why should you go and pay for one? Well, because I have developed this over 15 years, and everything the way it's taught is in 2 languages, and the order by which it's taught. And as you see, you're here in E flat major, and then right into octave on a string. Now, this is something that I came up with, and it doesn't need to be comprehensive. It needs to be essential. And then you're already shifting. And then boom, you're into the 4 clefs. I use this funky clef. People freak out about that, lose their marbles, 1 octave arpeggios, and it's all very systematic going things. Because I want to play songs in minor. There's a song that everybody. Well, that's D minor, Ré mineur. So they need to learn these things, and so I use these reference. Well, what is a key signature? You got to know some reading of music, and so I come up with the scale book based upon the years of practice, years of teaching, and the order by which I teach it. And like for instance, the natural minor is something really important for me, because people think that the minor is the melodic minor, and it's no, the Ré 6th and 7th. Minor is, first you have to know the natural mode before you know the harmonic and melodic mode. So how do you know what you're modifying if you don't know the original form of it, which is the natural form? So I came up with this, and it uses something that I've developed over the years, and it's my color-coded bracket system, and so it's in color. And it's gone through many iterations. I started making them in 2010, And it has all the little things like, this thing right here, the one fingering to rule them all. A lot of little fun things in here. And I'll go to the back. I'm really proud of that. There's little lectures, and so there's a lecture right there, some ear training stuff. It gets now we get to the more heavy stuff. There's third octave, and there's third octave melodic minor and thumb position, which I'm actually having fun doing with one of my students, getting her to do thumb position arpeggios, major thirds, and then get to the vocabulary, because again, they don't know. There's so many resources out there. I distill it into one resource, some simple, and of course in two languages, because teach in two languages. And then right here is a scorecard. A lot of students wanted to know, like, all right, where do I stand? How good am I? Here's your scorecard. Can you play these scales? Can you play a C major scale? And you use this complicated system of smileys, and then you fill in the blanks. And so when you see a new song, like, all right, this song is in F major. You go to your scorecard. Can you play, let's say, F major? Can you play a 2-octave F major scale? Well, there's nothing there. And I can, objectively say to a student whether, and this is the whole scale book. If you fill in all of the white blocks, you've mastered the scale book. And this right here is one very particular thing that I believe I'm the only student and only teacher in the world doing this. And I had a vision back in 2011, a vision of no paper, that the future involves no paper. And we're too young for this. When movies came out, they're all black and white, and then color came in, and people said, "Well, that's going to take away from the drama, from the gravity of the scene. Black and white movies are more dramatic." And we see them now as something that is used for effect, but come on, a color movie is like, colors like how we see. So I devised this color-coded bracket system to show the positions, in the music. And so, because again, we see in color. And so all of my different parts right here, I'm going to use like this right here. Here's a good example. So you'll see my colors all there. And yes, there's a presumption that you, as a student, are going to either be printing in color or using a tablet. And I honestly believe that the future is a paperless future. When I got my iPad in 2011, I stopped using paper, and I haven't used paper ever since. So the idea of writing things down or pencil and paper and erasing, that's ancient. That's last century, last millennia. 100 years from now, we're not going to be reading off paper. 200 years from now, everything's going to be digital. We see in color, so we should learn in color. There's your half position, lower second position. And it doesn't interfere with your understanding of the music. It's outside of the fingerings, outside of the bowings. It's there. And a lot of my students I need the colors, and they love the colors. And it really helps them distill like what is happening with the music. And that this right here is a shift. Without the bracket, you would say, okay, what is that? But with the bracket, you can refer to that. A lot of my students refer to hey, that is upper second position. And the colors that I use, going back to my wonderful thing here, because I really like it, by the way. I love I even have a distilled version. Here it is. And these particular colors, I'm proud to say that I had a student that was very colorblind. And we went through and found all the shades that he could do. He saw shades of brown, and that was it. So these are all ones he could differentiate from each other. So that's why they're kind of off. They're not really strong greens, strong blues. They're all little separate colors, and you have the hex codes next to them so you can match it up on your printer and on your computer so you can have exactly the color that appears here. And it works. A lot of people and on my website, it's the same thing. So I started again in 2011, I was, let me bring up, I hope they fixed my website. Okay, they did. In 2011, I started building this ecosystem. It's not only am I making all my scores on in PDF format. I don't believe in paper anymore. So when I have a lesson, I make it notations and I email it to you, and you have a new version of the score. But also, I have been doing this for such a long time. I have a library of all this stuff. And my students and my subscribers are like, well, I want the fingerings and I want the colors. I want your system, And so I've been building this ecosystem of of pedagogy and of scores and of teaching videos. And so they all kind of come together. And yeah, on my website here, you can get some of the scores if you so wish, and which is great if you so wish, but not necessarily. But here's the latest one. I'm very proud of this, the Sugar Plum Fairy. And once again, you see, here there's my fourth position right here. And this was a request from a student to play the Sugar Plum Fairy. And again, it's a lot of work that I put in, and people actually supported a little bit. So yeah, if you want to buy any of my scores, go to cellocoach.com. I am the cello coach. And there's some people trying to copy. Some people try to copy it, but I know it's all good. I don't have the trademark yet, but when you think of cello coach, I'm kind of the guy. I don't call myself a cello professor or cello guru or anything. I'm a cello coach. That's why I wear like sporty outfits. I'm going to go in and sweat with you and do it with you. And, coaches aren't, masters. Coaches are people that did the sport, that are passionate about making their team, their athletes as good, even better than them, and pushing them to the next level. That's what coaches do. So that's what I do. I'm a cello coach.
Well, you've certainly blazed the trail for the rest of us, and we greatly appreciate it because you've been doing this for such a long time, and just so appreciate you. And we will link all this up. You can go straight there, cellocoach.com, and we'll get you there to the website for the scale book and all the scores. But we'll also link it up specifically down in the description here of the video, so you can find and connect with Jonathan there. There was one other thing you said a second ago that is also a cornerstone of something that I've written in some blog post there, but I don't think I've ever actually asked it. So I'm glad you brought it up. You were talking about we were talking about playing for somebody else, and the sound being out there, and we've mentioned this before. Play to the back row. How much do you think? And let me preface this. I am not a neuroscientist. Neither is Jonathan. we're just curious cellists with lots of experience. But is that whole spatial relation thing real? Is there like some real biological thing going on there where we're thinking about the space around us? I also ask it because one of my aunts was a elementary music teacher. And one of her things she would do to help me sing and to help her students sing, and she would tell them, literally put the note right here in front of you, And you kind of said the same thing. Like, what do you think is going on there? This whole thing of like, put the sound out there, and it really does help. I mean, why do you think it helps?
I think it's our awareness, our presence of mind. When I talk about the bow, it's the same thing. I don't talk about pressure. I don't talk about weight. I talk about presence of the bow. Where are you present along your bow? You're not pushing down. You are, where are you present? Are you present? Are you aware of this? And when it comes to this, I guess this understanding of putting your note out there, I like how you said that. I call myself the cello coach for a reason, because I relate it to a lot to sports, because we are athletes. When you have, I'm going to take the quarterback for example, and they throw that ball 40, 30 yards, and where are they thinking? They're thinking here? Are they thinking the arc? Or are they out there? Where is Peyton Manning or or any of the famous guys, Brett Favre, whatever? I'm aging myself. The new guy for the Chiefs, don't know his name.
It's all right. I got a couple of years on you, I think, Jonathan. You're right there together.
All right. Who's the guy for the Patriots? Anyway, the guy for the Patriots. That was like really good. Forget his name.
I know he's like the most famous one. I can't think of his name either.
See his face. Anyway, so quarterbacks aren't like thinking about the here or the trajectory. They're right there, and like a golfer. A golfer aims out there. And so if we can aim the ball out there and get it in the hands of our wide receiver, get into that get into the green area to make par or under par, if we can do that, that's where presence is. Then our notes need the same thing on a much smaller scale. We're not shooting out there, but when you are in a bigger, smaller room, I don't like to say play to the back row, because that's presuming that first there are rows. And secondly, I like to say kind of like permeate permeate the crowd. Play in a way that is so that arrests the attention of everyone around you. And the best thing is when you play in a noisy bar, you probably have done this, play it in a noisy bar, people are drinking, they're just having a good time, and you start playing cello. And when that ripples out, and you get people, and people don't go, shh, they just like have to stop, like, wait a minute, that sounds, whatever that is, that's good. And for a moment, you may get 2-3 seconds from that noisy couple on the end of the bar. But when you do, and you get that little bit of quietness, and they go back to talking and cussing each other out, that is, to me, that's magic. Because then everybody's sort of like itching to have a little bit of like a little respite from thinking. And music gives us that ability. As musicians and as music teachers, we are transferring this knowledge to our students, to everyone else, to like, hey, we're giving you I call it the dragon's breath, so then you can take and breathe this magic out of your instrument and onto people. And regardless if they like it or not, you want to arrest them. You want to stop them. Even if they stop for 10 seconds or 2 seconds, you have made an impression on them. If they stop, that's not in tune. They listen to you. As if they walk by and don't do anything, that's the worst. If they stop, oh wow, that's great. Okay, you impressed them. Stop, oh, that's not good. Hey, they still listen to you. So, especially with the social media, they stop, oh, I don't like that. Well, they listened to it and left a comment.
Oh, we know about the trolls, don't we?
Oh, do we ever know about the trolls? Do we ever know about the trolls?
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. And make sure you check out the links in the description there if you want to find Jonathan here online, cellocoach.com. We'll put links to all that, including the scale books and his scores. Anything else for the Cello Online audience here?
Enough talk.
Parting words of wisdom.
Parting words of wisdom. Remember, it will never be good enough, but is it good enough for you?
I love that. Beautiful. You know,
Thank you, and thank you, and thank you for having me, and everybody watching this. You know, cello is a beautiful, wonderful thing. Keep it up. It's frustrating, but you will get there. You will get there one day, and when you do, it's so rewarding.
Be sure and check out part 2 of this interview right here on the channel. And if you're in the mood for something else, YouTube thinks you'll like this video right here.